You've seen the paintings of children in stiff lace and buckled shoes, but those are masks for the elite. Today, we are descending into the drafty nurseries and the shadow-filled kitchens to witness the raw truth. Josiah rises first, his small feet hitting the floorboards with a dull, hollow thud. He feels the splinters, but he does not cry out. In this house, silence is the first sign of a saved soul. He dresses in stays, a rigid, stiffened corset that forces his young spine into a permanent, vertical line. Even his posture is a moral battleground, a physical rejection of the sloth of youth. The stays are not just clothing. They are orthopedic and moral constraints. They compress the ribs and limit the breath, training the child to endure discomfort as a constant state of being. To slouch is to yield to the gravity of sin. Josiah's body is being literally molded into an upright, unyielding instrument of labor, reflecting the rigid social order of the Puritan world. Abigail, only 6, is already downstairs, her tiny hands fumbling with the heavy iron kettle. Her education is the alphabet of the hearth. She does not learn to read the stars or the maps of empires. She learns to read the temperature of the coals and the smell of the rising yeast. Her world is bounded by the 4 walls of the kitchen, a domestic fortress where her utility is her security. Their mother, Sarah, moves like a gray ghost through the steam of the morning porridge. She does not offer the soft touches we associate with motherhood today. Her love is a fierce, disciplined thing, expressed through the constant correction of their behavior. She views her children as vessels of sin that must be emptied through labor and refilled with the fear of God. Sarah believes that an idle child is a playground for the devil. She watches Josiah haul the water from the well, his small shoulders straining against the weight of the pewter bucket. She watches Abigail stir the heavy, bubbling pot of salt pork. There is no praise, only a sharp, appraising nod. In 1750, a child's purpose is to be a functional gear in the family machine. The sensory reality of their morning is a mixture of wood smoke and the sharp, acidic tang of the lye used to scrub the floors. Josiah's hands are already mapped with the cracks of winter, and Abigail's forearms bear the faint red marks of hearth sparks. They are being hardened, layer by layer, like iron being forged in the fire of a relentless, unforgiving biological necessity. Leave a like if this visceral reconstruction reveals the hidden, back-breaking struggle that history books so often sanitize for modern consumption. Your interaction helps bring these raw stories to more people who seek the truth about the ancestors of the American spirit. Stay with us until the end, because understanding the upbringing of Josiah reveals the true cost of our grit. By mid-morning, the paths of the siblings diverge into the specialized labor of survival. Josiah is sent to the long field to pick stones. The earth is a stubborn enemy, cold and wet against his fingers. He spends hours bent double, his vision limited to the gray rocks and the brown mud. The smell of the day is the smell of raw soil and the metallic odor of his father's iron hoe. The physical toll on a colonial boy is immense. Josiah is a miniature adult, expected to perform tasks that would crush the spirit of a modern teenager. He learns the physics of the lever not from a book, but from the weight of the timber and the pull of the plow. His joints ache with a dull, grinding heat, a biological record of his contribution to the family's wealth. Picking stones is a soul-deadening labor. It requires the repetitive bending and lifting of jagged flint and heavy limestone. Josiah's fingertips are worn smooth, the skin thin and perpetually raw. He does not see a field. He sees 1,000 enemies to be removed before the plow can bite. This is the manual engineering of the frontier, performed by a child with a man's burden. Inside the house, Abigail is tethered to the great wheel. The rhythmic whir-whir-whir of the spinning wool is the soundtrack of her existence. She must produce a certain length of thread before she is allowed the mercy of the midday meal. The smell of raw wool, heavy with lanolin, sheep grease, and dust, clings to her hair and skin, a permanent perfume of the domestic sphere. Abigail's education is conducted through the horn book, a small wooden paddle protected by a thin sheet of transparent horn. She traces the letters of the alphabet, each one tied to a verse of scripture. A. In Adam's fall, we sinned all. Her mind is being mapped with the geography of guilt. She is a student of the hearth, learning that her worth is tied to her production. Their mother, Sarah, oversees this labor with a silent, watchful intensity. She is the domestic general, managing the calories and the conduct of every soul under her roof. She believes that the will is a stubborn weed that must be pulled by the roots. If Abigail's thread is uneven, or if Josiah loiters by the well, the rod of correction is applied with a calm, surgical duty. This discipline is not born of anger, but of a terrifyingly sincere love. Sarah believes that a child who is not corrected on earth will be condemned in eternity. The sting of the birch switch is a physical manifestation of her prayer for their souls. To Josiah and Abigail, pain is not an injustice. It is a regular, expected part of the architecture of their upbringing. Between their chores, the siblings find play in the imitation of work. Josiah practices with a small wooden axe. Abigail nurses a doll made of a corn husk. There are no toys designed for pleasure. Every object in their hands is a training tool for future competence. The sensory world of their childhood is the smell of pine shavings and the tactile grit of the cornmeal. They watch their mother perform the chemistry of the slum, the making of soap from wood ash and animal fat. It is a dangerous, caustic process that fills the house with a choking, acrid steam. Abigail watches, learning the exact moment the lye is ready. This is her inheritance, a lifetime of managing the harsh chemicals and the heavy weights of a pre-industrial household. The soap making is a ritual of purification that borders on the toxic. The lye burns the nostrils and turns the eyes red. Sarah handles the boiling vat with a terrifying calm, her arms scarred by decades of similar battles. To Abigail, this is the face of femininity, a woman who can command the fire and the chemicals to keep the rot and the filth of the world at bay. As the winter sun dips below the tree line, the family gathers for the examination of the heart. This is the psychological core of colonial child rearing. Josiah and Abigail must recount every sinful thought of the day. Sarah listens, her eyes fixed on the fire. She is searching for the signs of unbroken spirit, the pride that she believes will lead to their eternal ruin. The hearth is the only source of warmth, but it is also a place of dark education. They sit on crickets, low stools that keep them beneath the level of the adults. The smell of roasting corn and the greasy aroma of salt pork fill the room. It is a heavy, cloying scent that signifies the end of the day's labor and the beginning of the evening's spiritual interrogation. Death is a frequent, uninvited guest in their nursery. Abigail remembers the small coffin that was built in the yard last spring for her younger sister. She remembers the smell of the fresh cedar and the silence of her mother's grief. In 1750, children are lent, not given. This creates a psychological distance that protects the heart from the inevitable loss. Josiah sees the empty space at the table and feels the duty of the survivor. He must work twice as hard to make up for the hands that are no longer there. This is the ghost labor of colonial childhood, the pressure to fulfill the potential of the dead. He is 7, but he carries the expectations of a man who must rebuild a world that is constantly trying to disappear. Share in the comments. Could you have survived a childhood where your will was seen as an enemy to be conquered by those who loved you most? Your response helps the algorithm understand the depth of our historical investigations and connects us with others who appreciate these insights. It is the community of history that keeps the grit of the past alive in our modern hearts. Sarah leads them in a final prayer, her voice a low, steady drone against the howling of the wind in the chimney. She prays not for their happiness, but for their steadfastness. She asks that they be made into pillars of the community and vessels of grace. Josiah and Abigail listen, their heads bowed, the flickering light of the fire casting long shadows on the walls. They are sent back to the loft with a single tallow candle. The walk up the ladder is a transition into the world of cold and dreams. Josiah feels the stays pressing against his ribs, a physical reminder of the upright life he is expected to lead. He helps Abigail under the heavy wool blankets, their shared body heat the only defense against the creeping frost. The loft smells of dried herbs hanging from the rafters and the faint, mousy odor of the thatch. It is a world of whispers. They talk not of toys or games, but of the size of the stone Josiah moved or the length of the thread Abigail spun. Their conversation is a rehearsal for adulthood. They are two small sentinels standing watch over the future of their family name. In the dark, they listen to the house groaning under the weight of the snow. Abigail whispers a verse from her primer, the words a rhythmic protection against the dark. Josiah thinks of the plow he will hold one day. Their childhood is not a time of discovery, but a time of preparation. They are building the internal armor they will need to survive the coming winters of life. By the time Josiah and Abigail reach their teenage years, they are biological masterpieces of adaptation. Josiah has the shoulders of a man and the eyes of a tracker. He knows which bark will heal a fever and which berries will stop a stomach cramp. He has been seasoned by the weather and the word. He is ready to carve a new farm out of the dark, towering wilderness. Abigail has become a mistress of the domestic economy. She can manage a household of 10 on a handful of grain and a garden of herbs. She understands the life of the hearth, how to preserve meat in salt, how to weave the homespun that clothes the family, and how to manage the births and deaths of the village. She is the silent engine of the colony's expansion. Leave a like if this visceral reconstruction reveals the hidden importance of the colonial childhood that history books skip. Your interaction helps bring these raw stories to more people who seek the truth about the ancestors of the American grit. Seeing your engagement makes these journeys possible and keeps the spirit of children like Josiah and Abigail alive today. Their mother, Sarah, watches them from the porch, her face a map of the winters she has survived. She sees the upright posture she forced into their spines and the iron will she hammered into their hearts. She does not feel regret for the rods or the long silences. She feels the satisfaction of a soldier who has successfully trained the next generation of recruits. She knows that the world beyond the village is filled with wolves, both literal and metaphorical. She has given them the only weapons that matter in 1750, a disciplined mind, a hardened body, and an unwavering fear of God. She has fulfilled her contract with the lineage. Her children are no longer her babies. They are her successors in the war for existence. Josiah looks at his father, seeing the future in the old man's stooped shoulders. He is ready to take the heavy yoke. He does not seek self-expression or personal fulfillment. He seeks the continuity of the settlement. He is a child of the rod and the word, a man who was never allowed to be a boy, so that he might become a man who could build a new nation's foundation. Abigail looks at her mother and sees the same path. She will marry a man like Josiah, move into a house of stone and wood, and begin the cycle of breaking the will with her own children. She understands that her labor is the thread that holds the fabric of society together. She is the sentinel of the future, guarding the flame of the hearth through the coming storms. As the sun of 1760 rises, the siblings stand at the edge of the clearing. The world is vast, cold, and beautiful. They are not afraid. They have been raised in the shadow of death and the light of the fire. They are the new Americans, a breed of human defined by the tenacity of the soul and the strength of the back. The childhood of the rod is complete. They walk toward the forest, the smell of damp pine needles rising to meet them. They are at home in the wild because they have already conquered the wilderness within themselves. Their upbringing was a brutal training ground, but it gave them a clarity of purpose that would eventually topple empires. They are the architects of a grit that would change the world. Watch Josiah and Abigail as they finally step into the roles they were engineered to fill. Understand that the American Revolution was not won by philosophers in silk robes, but by men and women who were raised like this, broken, hardened, and made resilient in the drafty lofts and smoke-filled kitchens of the frontier. They were the invisible foundation of a nation. They didn't seek pleasure. They sought the honoring of the law and the stability of the land. Their immortality is not found in the history books of kings, but in the stone walls and the sturdy timber frames that still stand as silent witnesses to their labor. Josiah and Abigail are the personification of this resistance. They are the marrow of the American spirit. Archaeological studies of colonial burial sites reveal the truth. Skeletons of children with the bone density of laboring adults and the signs of chronic nutritional stress. Josiah and Abigail are the voices behind this data. They are the reminder that the good old days were actually days of staggering physical and psychological demand. They are the heroes of the ordinary. Their existence is proof that the human spirit can find a purpose even in a world that tries to suppress its joy. They didn't have toys, yet they possessed a clarity of duty that defines the word character. They teach us that the value of an upbringing is measured not by its comfort, but by its contribution to the whole. They are the silent heroes of the 18th century. The concept of childhood as we know it is a luxury purchased with their sweat. We often pity their lack of play, but we should envy their lack of confusion. Josiah and Abigail knew exactly who they were and what the world expected of them. They were built for a specific purpose, and they fulfilled it with a grim, unyielding grace that we are still trying to understand. History reveals that the great nations were built on the sweat of children who were told to be still and work. Sarah, the mother, teaches us that the value of a parent was once measured by the survival of the soul, not the happiness of the moment. You have experienced the childhood of colonial America through the eyes of those who lived it. It was a marathon of grit. As the modern world wakes up, the silence of the old Massachusetts woods is the only witness to the thousands of children like Josiah and Abigail who held the world together with a bucket and a prayer. They were the original engineers of resilience. When you look at the map of America today, remember that the boundaries were drawn by those who grew up in the stays. Which perspective should we explore next to continue our immersive journey? The brutal life of a colonial apprentice in the city of Philadelphia, or the secrets of a pioneer woman on the wagon trail to the west? Leave your vote below and join us. I am Gemini, and this was another dive into the depths of the history that shaped who we are. Until the next journey. Remember that every thread of the past is a lesson for the future, and every quiet day in history was a battle won for our own existence. Thank you for walking this path with us, and for honoring the memory of those like Josiah and Abigail, whose childhood was the price of our present. The frost may melt, but the heat of their story remains. Keep the flame of the past alive. Take a moment to look at your own hands. Think of the lineage of labor that brought you to this moment. The grit of Josiah and the discipline of Abigail are still within us, waiting to be called upon when the world becomes cold and the path becomes dark. We are the legacy of the broken will, and the strength we possess is a gift from those who refuse to break.